Margaret Chen had been cleaning the offices of Sterling Tech for 3 years. Every evening at 6 o'clock, after the software engineers and executives had gone home, she would arrive with her cart of supplies, her yellow cleaning gloves, and a thermos of tea her daughter had prepared for her. She was 58 years old. With gentle blue eyes and blonde hair, she kept neatly pulled back beneath a lace headband. Her uniform was always pristine, a traditional housekeeping dress that reminded her of simpler times. Margaret took pride in her work, in the shine she brought to every surface, in the order she restored to each busy office. Most evenings, the building was empty by the time she arrived. But not tonight. As Margaret pushed her cart past the executive suite, she noticed a light still burning in the corner office. Through the glass walls, she could see James Morrison, the company's 52-year-old CEO, hunched over his desk. His suit jacket was draped over his chair. His tie loosened, and even from the hallway, she could see the tension in his shoulders. Margaret had cleaned Mr. Morrison's office for years, but they'd never exchanged more than polite nods. He seemed kind enough. He always left his desk tidy for her, never made unnecessary messes. Once, he'd left a thank-you note after she'd stayed late to clean up after a big presentation. She decided to start her cleaning route on the other side of the building to give him privacy. But 2 hours later, when she returned, he was still there. His head was in his hands now, and several coffee cups littered his desk. Margaret hesitated, then gently knocked on the open door. James looked up, startled. His eyes were red with exhaustion. "Oh, Margaret, I'm sorry, I'll be out of your way soon. Just give me a few more minutes." "Take all the time you need, Mr. Morrison," she said softly. "I can come back." But as she turned to leave, something on his computer screen caught her eye. Years ago, in another lifetime, those green lines of code would have been her whole world. She paused, squinting at the monitor. "Is everything all right?" she asked gently. James let out a long, weary sigh. "It's this security protocol. We've been working on it for 6 months. We have a $200 million contract with the federal government riding on it, and we're supposed to present it tomorrow morning. But there's a flaw in the encryption algorithm, and none of my top engineers can find it. I've had 12 people looking at this code for weeks." He rubbed his eyes. "I'm sorry. You don't need to hear about my problems. You have your own work to do." Margaret set down her cleaning supplies and took a small step closer. May I look at it?" James seemed confused but gestured toward the screen. "Of course. But I have to warn you, it's pretty technical stuff." Margaret pulled on her yellow gloves, not to clean, but because her hands were cold and they helped her think. She studied the screen for a long moment, her eyes moving across the lines of code with a focus that surprised James. Then, very quietly, she said, "The problem is in the third nested loop. You're using a deprecated hash function that creates a vulnerability in the authentication sequence. It's a timing attack vector." James sat up straight. "What?" Margaret leaned closer, pointing with a gloved finger. "See here? This function call. It was secure in older systems, but with modern processors, an attacker could measure the response time and reverse engineer the encryption key. You need to replace it with a constant time comparison algorithm." She straightened up, suddenly aware that she might have overstepped. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have—" "Wait!" James interrupted, his voice filled with astonishment. He was staring at her as if seeing her for the first time. "How do you know this?" Margaret's cheeks colored slightly. I used to be a software engineer. A long time ago. 25 years ago, actually. Before—" She trailed off, her eyes distant. "Before what?" James asked gently. Margaret took a breath. "Before my husband got sick. Cancer. The treatments were expensive, and our insurance didn't cover everything. I left my job to take care of him. After he passed, I'd been out of the field for so long that nobody would hire me back. I was in my mid-50s, and the tech world had moved on without me." She smiled sadly. "So I found work cleaning. It's honest work. It pays the bills, and it's kept me close to the world I used to love. Even if I'm just on the outside of it now." James was quiet for a moment, processing this revelation. Then he turned back to his computer. "Show me exactly what needs to be changed." "Mr. Morrison, I really shouldn't—" "Please," he said. "If you're right about this, and I have a feeling you are, you might have just saved this company. For the next hour, Margaret walked James through the fix. Her explanations were clear and patient, her expertise evident in every word. She'd point out a line of code, explain the vulnerability, and suggest the correction. James would implement it, test it, and watch as the security protocols strengthened. By 8:30, the problem was solved. James leaned back in his chair, staring at the screen in disbelief. Margaret, do you realize what you just did? My entire team of engineers, with all their advanced degrees and certifications, couldn't crack this. And you solved it in an hour, Margaret smiled modestly. They would have found it eventually. Fresh eyes often see things that tired ones miss. No, James said firmly. This wasn't just fresh eyes. This was expertise. Real, deep expertise. He paused. Margaret, I know this is sudden, but would you consider coming back? Not as a cleaner, as an engineer. As a senior security consultant. Margaret's eyes widened. Mr. Morrison, I haven't worked in software in 25 years. The technology has changed so much. The fundamentals haven't changed, James countered. And what you just demonstrated isn't something that can be taught in a classroom. That's intuition. That's experience. That's wisdom. He stood up, his exhaustion replaced by excitement. I'm 52 years old, Margaret. I've learned that the biggest mistake we make in this industry is worshiping youth and forgetting that knowledge and wisdom don't expire. They deepen. 3 months later, the conference room at Sterling Tech was filled with employees, from junior developers to senior executives. At the front of the room stood Margaret Chen, no longer in her cleaning uniform but in professional attire, though she still wore a small lace pin on her collar, a reminder of where she'd come from. James Morrison stood beside her. 3 months ago, he announced, Margaret solved a critical problem that had stumped our entire engineering team. Thanks to her work, we secured the largest government contract in our company's history. But more importantly, she reminded me of something I'd forgotten. He looked around the room. Talent doesn't have an expiration date. Experience matters, and sometimes the people we overlook are the ones with the most to offer. He turned to Margaret, which is why I'm proud to announce that Margaret Chen is now our Chief Security Officer. She'll be leading our entire security division and helping us build not just better software, but a better company culture, one that values wisdom as much as innovation. The room erupted in applause. Margaret felt tears prick her eyes, but they were good tears, grateful tears. After the announcement, a young engineer named Sarah approached Margaret. Ms. Chen, I just want to say, my mom is about your age, and she's been afraid to go back to work after taking time off to raise us kids. You've inspired me to encourage her. Thank you, Margaret squeezed her hand. Tell your mother that it's never too late. The path might look different than she expected, but that doesn't make it any less valuable. That evening, as Margaret packed up her new office, one with her name on the door, she found James standing in the doorway. You know, he said thoughtfully, I've been thinking about what you said that night. About finding honest work. About staying close to what you loved even from the outside. Yes? Margaret prompted. There's something beautiful in that, James continued. In staying faithful to what matters, even when circumstances change. In finding dignity in whatever work we do. You taught me that life isn't just about the corner off. He was, Margaret replied softly. And I think he'd be proud to know that all those years I spent caring for him, all those years I spent cleaning these offices, none of it was wasted. It all led here. She looked around her new office, then back at James. Thank you for seeing me, Mr. Morrison. Not just as a cleaner, but as a person. As someone with something to offer. James shook his head. Thank you for reminding me that worth isn't determined by a title or a resume. Sometimes the most valuable person in the room is the one we never thought to ask. Epilogue. Margaret Chen went on to revolutionize Sterling Tech's security protocols. She also started a mentorship program for older workers returning to the tech industry, helping dozens of people rediscover careers they thought were lost to them. And every year, on the anniversary of that evening, she would visit the cleaning staff at Sterling Tech, thank them for their work, and remind them that every person in that building, from the CEO to the night cleaner, had value, had dignity, and had something important to contribute, because she had learned, in the quiet hours between one life and another, that we are never just one thing. We are the sum of our experiences, our kindnesses, our persistence, and our willingness to show up, even when no one is watching. And sometimes, the greatest opportunities come not when we're searching for them, but when we're simply being faithful to the work in front of us, one quiet evening at a time.